In several environmental fields, but particularly with regards to climate change, you'll hear words like adaptation and mitigation. What do these mean? Adaptation means to adapt. It means to adjust, to get used to the new situation. For instance, if you didn't tidy your room, but instead piled all your clothes on your bed, adaptation would mean getting used to sleeping on top of that lumpy pile. You'd say to yourself, well, my bed's just lumpy now, and you'd go forward that way, accepting that that is the new normal. With regards to climate change, there's a considerable amount of adaptation that we need to make. Even if we stopped greenhouse gas emissions tomorrow, the repercussions of the emissions we've already released will continue to have an impact on the Earth's climate. Some things will continue getting worse. For example, polar ice will continue to melt, which means that sea level rise will continue to progress. Already, coastal cities are under threat from sea level rise. They are faced with serious decisions. Do they move coastal roads and underground infrastructure? Do they build expensive seawalls which the ocean will tear down over time and which have far-ranging environmental impacts on their own? Do they prohibit building at the edge of the sea? Do they begin what's called managed retreat and begin demolishing seaside buildings, moving civilization back to higher ground? All of these are questions of adaptation. Yes, we definitely need to adapt. We can't ignore the problem and pretend it will go away. But our climate response demands that we think in broader terms. Mitigation is the classification of actions that lessen the severity. If we return to our messy bed analogy, climate mitigation is like making the decision to quit piling any more clothes on the bed. We're going to stop the pile from growing any further. What's more, we might pledge that we're going to take a few garments off the bed each day to lessen the pile. Meanwhile, sure, there's still an enormous pile that we need to sleep on each night, but over time, we're working at lessening the size of the pile. Climate mitigation includes cutting further greenhouse gas emissions. One of the big ones is capping sources of methane. Oftentimes we focus solely on carbon dioxide emissions, but carbon dioxide is only one of several potent greenhouse gases. Methane is really concentrated in cow poop, and with our current system of agriculture, cows are fairly concentrated on the landscape. California has required producers to decrease their methane emissions by 40% from 2013 levels, and they're required to do this by 2030. The cow poop is put in methane digesters. As the poop decomposes, the digester captures the methane, the biogas. Cleaned up versions of the gas might become biomethane, or RNG, or RCNG. Sequestration is the term for when we capture carbon dioxide. In our messy room example, sequestration is like opening drawers and beginning to tuck the clothes into the drawers. We're taking the clothes off the bed and we're tucking them into the drawers. That means the bed is getting cleared off slowly and it's returning to the nice flat surface that we would prefer to sleep on. In climate science, you'll hear the term carbon sequestration, or you'll hear people refer to carbon sinks. A forest is an example of a carbon sink, especially one where we have intentionally reforested an area in order to capture carbon in the trees and the roots and their surrounding ecosystem. Oftentimes trees are our knee-jerk answer. Got climate change? Plant trees. However, trees are not the only way to sequester carbon. One of the largest, most accessible, least expensive potential carbon sinks is in our agricultural soils. By using regenerative agricultural practices, there are a whole lot of techniques, we can capture a significant amount of carbon and we can do it quite rapidly. But to accomplish this, we'll need to completely overhaul the practices of industrialized agriculture. This diagram doesn't show a field, however, I chose it because it's clear about how the process works. It shows that the answers aren't actually in the tree. The answers are in the microorganisms, the living component of the soil. Growing food in living soils is something that the very poorest subsistence farmer can do in her local field, so it becomes an accessible solution worldwide. It's something that many farmers and ranchers across the United States are experimenting with. In Kristen Olson's book, The Soil Will Save Us, she takes a tour of several farms which are exploring this practice. Courtney White's book, Grass, Soil, Hope, explains living soils from a cattle rancher's point of view. So returning to our messy room, through mitigation and sequestration, it's possible to clear the bed so that we return to a nice flat surface. Along the way, yes, we will have to do some climate adaptation because we can't accomplish clearing the bed immediately. But in any discussion about climate action, you want to be clear. Are we talking about climate adaptation or climate mitigation? We need to be working toward both.